Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 88. I'm Enigmaeus and today we're going to be working on the Cetorhinus, but first, got a bit of a problem. This is our small vessel. If you've been following this series, you might recognize it as the Hammerhead. And it's not this short, and it's usually not underwater, much less under the sand. See, what had happened was we docked the Hammerhead on the back of our capital vessel because it wouldn't fit inside the hangar. And then even though I had removed that entire hangar, the game still recognized the small vessel's position relative to the capital vessel. And you can see now, in order to get it out of the sand, I had to hop in the capital vessel and move it around so that the small vessel would be lifted up above the terrain, which is very, very necessary because its position, the way it was, stuck down in the sand, prevented me from actually getting inside without cutting holes in the hull. And I actually like this design as small vessels go. It's got a lot of firepower. It's good on fuel, so to speak. There's a lot of things for me to like about it, and I didn't want to start chopping it up just so that I could get it out of the terrain. Now you can see this is the entrance. And obviously you understand now, even if you didn't before, why it was necessary for us to get it up and out of the terrain. And it was just a bizarre kind of happening as a result of the capital vessel moving around as we were removing blocks from it. I had to strip both hangars off of it so that I would have enough blocks to continue building the Cetorhinus. And now we've got our small vessel recovered safely from its shipwrecked position in the sandy beaches of Oscutune. I was too amused actually to be bothered by the situation that created this. Now you can see in the background the hangar of the Cetorhinus. I've been busy. I've been hard at work doing everything that I could to get the sides and the bottom and the top all in place because they're pretty straightforward sorts of things that I didn't think anyone would mind not being forced to watch. It also gave me an opportunity to kind of decide on the size for the hangar. We're actually inside the hangar now, and you can see my character standing inside the hangar to give you a bit of sense of scale. I find that player character is one of the best ways to present sort of a sense of scale because it's really easy in the mind to compare the environment around the character based on its size. Lots of ramps on the back end. This is the rear entrance to the hangar. This would be primarily the entrance that you would be using for hover vessels if you're trying to get into the hangar, and probably getting out as well, just because of the ramp. And you can see we're putting a permanent constructed ramp on this side as well, so that it's a little bit easier. I may raise that ramp up a block still, just so that it goes flush with the top of the permanent part of the hangar door. I don't like getting hung up on terrain, and we've sort of created a situation for ourselves where it's entirely possible for that to happen. We got the ramps in place. You saw me put those in place, and now we're just going to kind of move them out of the way so that we could have a pretty clear view of what we're doing back here. Now, on the front of the hangar, as you've seen, it's a pretty straightforward design. I like it. I'm quite happy with it, despite the fact that there's not a lot to it. And then we followed all of that back, that profile that we had on the front that sort of distinguished it from just a plain shape, a plain polygon, something, certain number of sides. We carried that all the way back, and now I'm going to continue with that sort of profile. And instead of having this just wrap around and sort of a curved sort of transition from the side to the back, I actually want it kind of like a soft taper. Like it's going to be a soft curve that's going to extend a certain distance, and then it's going to stop, and then it's going to start from the inside of the end of that taper and curve back in towards the door. Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you the way I just described it, that's fine. It will once everything is done and you have an opportunity to see the finished version. But the main thing here is preserving that profile, that sort of stepped profile that kind of takes a few steps out and then a few steps back in. And it's surprisingly easy to do regardless of what kinds of blocks we're trying to use. 45 degree blocks, 22.5 degree blocks. Everything comes together quite easily, provided I remember all of the key details and don't kind of jump to conclusions about what I should be doing next without taking a look at what's already there, because that happened a couple of times and resulted in having to do some minor reworks. In this case, one of the things that I'm not accustomed to doing, and it sounds weird because it makes such sense in this build, but using blocks placed vertically, like straight up and down, and then let them follow their natural angles, it's not something that I've done a lot in the past. When I get down to using the 22.5 degree blocks in particular, for some reason I avoid using any of them so that they're straight up and down. In this case, I decided to use them in that capacity, and it worked out really, really well for the overall image of what was going on. And now you can see along the top there, you see how it's got a sloped section? To the right of the blocks that I'm working on now, I'm removing it. I kind of wanted it to have almost like a cave-like look to it as you were approaching the rear hangar, and I decided that I would slope the top parts as well. So we've got the sides that are kind of coming around in a soft curve, and then they're going to be sloping back in towards the door. And the top, I kind of had this idea that I was going to slope that down as well. There's really not enough room to make it slope the way that I would have liked to without starting to block off part of the hangar door. And that was the one hard and fast rule that I had throughout this entire process. More than following a profile, more than duplicating that profile all the way around, was never block off the hangar doors in any way, because that was one of the issues we had with our previous capital vessel, was not being able to get ships into the hangar doors, not because they were blocked off, but because they were too small. But in this case, the lesson that I learned is that it sucks to have a hangar that you can't get your ships in, and one of the best ways to ensure that your ships have every possible chance to get into the hangar door is to not block it off with things that don't need to be there. So that was kind of the goal that I set for myself when I decided to have it slope down from the top, was that we would be either not able to do the slope the way I wanted it to, or we would have to block off part of the door. And so we removed the slope blocks and we replaced them with straight ones. And all of the detail, all of the visual interest in this particular part of the hangar is going to be the sides of the hangar door, which will actually be potentially functional as a little bit of protection to ships that are trying to get into the hangar from the back door under fire. How often do I anticipate that that will actually be something that's useful? With me and the way that I play the game and the things that I focus on, never. But as a design that other people might take from a blueprint and use as is or modify to their liking, they may find it useful to have a little bit of extra cover when they're getting their ship into the hangar, so they can get it in there safely and close the door and be a little bit better protected all around. So that's why I'm kind of focused on having this come out extending back from the hangar door farther than what we have, say, on the front, where everything is flush to the hangar door and wraps around. There's nothing really extending out the front. Now, the next episode is going to be finishing off this part of the hangar. You'll get to see the final design with all the different slopes going in all the different directions, and then a few modifications to the interior with the elevators, because right now we've got the elevator coming straight down in the middle of the hangar. I don't want it there. I want the hangar to be as wide open as possible to give us as much flexibility as possible for docking whatever ships we might have. So we're going to rework that a little bit, and then we'll be on to the superstructure, the main part of the ship with all of the equipment and all the things that we use that we kind of need above and beyond a hangar in order to make the ship useful. So if you want to be notified about the next and future episodes, the easiest way to do that, as always, is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always on the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.